I was with a buddy and we were snowshoeing up a mountain and deep snow, and we all of a sudden looked at each other and started laughing with deep belly laughing because we were tired. We were huffing and puffing, but we were going straight up through the snow up the mountain and we weren't stopping. Like we just had so much energy and so much strength. So at that moment in time, we stopped and we looked out from our view in the mountain. I said, it's just a moment in time. I want to recognize because it's not always like this. It's not always going to be like this. Everything in my life feels like a 10 out of 10. My fitness, my strength, and so on. My business, my career, being passionate and successful, my relationship, my children, where I live, etc. And it was 2 weeks later that I was diagnosed with stage 4 head and neck cancer.
I'd like to welcome you to a very special podcast today. I'm doing my first interview on this podcast, and I am incredibly honored to have as my first guest someone I've admired for many years, Peter Twist. Let me tell you a little bit about him before I have him start talking about himself. Peter Twist coached for 11 years in the National Hockey League. He built and operated 12 sport training centers in 4 countries. His business, Twist Conditioning, has developed 20,000 college and high school athletes, 2,000 pro and Olympic athletes, and 5 major league MVPs. He was selected by the China government to lead modernization of training for the summer and winter China Olympic programs. And he shifted the fitness and sports industry's training paradigms when he introduced the first 3 functional training certification courses. He produced 22 certification courses, actually, and he built Twist Education and products to 330 global distributors. He was selected as Under Armour's global education partner, and he brought the iconic IDEA world brand to Shanghai, China. And IDEA is a world-renowned fitness association. He's delivered 1,500 lectures, over 100 motivational keynotes. He's authored 20 books, 44 DVDs. He's a multi-course author for the American Council on Exercise, which is another world fitness brand. He's received multiple awards around the world, and he's a published researcher on brain and body neuromuscular training adaptation. He's a former multi-sport athlete, as you might imagine. Currently, he's a mountaineer, a skier, hiker, trail runner, and he's a stage 4 cancer thriver. Peter, I'm so grateful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Luci. I'm honored to be here and really looking forward to our conversation with you and with your listeners.
Yeah, and thank you so much for being willing to share your story with us. I mean,
absolutely.
That last piece that I just read, the stage 4 cancer thriver, I noticed you don't say survivor, you say thriver, which is awesome. And that's what we're going to dive into because I think you have the most compelling story about the human mind and body and spirit and what it's capable of. First of all, before that, you already had that story. But then you got put to the test even more. And I'm feeling it right now as we're talking about it, like what that must have been for you. So I want our listeners to hear and understand your journey through that experience now that they know all the great accomplishments that you've been able to do. And if you don't mind, I'd like to just start right off with, how did you hear that you had cancer?
What that's such a great starting question. And I do want to prelude that by saying respectfully to everyone listening, stage 4 cancer it gets seen in a certain light because yes, I did need to battle to survive and come back and rebuild from scratch. But it's also not a unique story in that I think difficulty is the commonality that we all share. And I appreciate, I've learned, I'm a very private person, but I've learned to speak to this part of my story and journey because I've learned that when I personalize a story, it generalizes to everyone, and the listeners may not have stage 4 cancer, but I'm sure they have difficulties in their lives that look differently in different areas. And so a lot of the mindset and the philosophy and the approach to be successful, moving from survive to thrive. I do say thrive now, but at first I was just hanging in there minute by minute to survive. There's a continuum, but we can get to thrive. And, in every difficulty lay opportunity to rise up. And if you keep going, you get to thrive. But my story is shared respectfully, within mind everybody's difficulties and challenges. And I hope people take away some nuggets from this that they can apply. And I'm also going to share number one, like one of my main philosophies to encourage people is do what you can now to stay upstream from illness. That means stay ahead of illness. Don't get ill. It's a lot easier, cheaper, and less time intensive to invest in your health than it is to invest in overcoming sickness. And so it's prudent really right now. And one of the reasons I survived, I'm told, and I know I trained for this my whole life, with other challenges, with like putting in late hours for business, with sport championships, playing injured, training for sport, pushing oneself at times hard to build resiliency and can-do attitude. So I'm going to start out and then I'll go right to your question on how I heard. To right away to emphasize the key points while folks are here. You got to be ready to be your best when your best is needed. Imagine an athlete in an NBA game who's been on the bench and a star player gets injured or fouls out and the coach taps the player on the bench on the shoulder. That's their opportunity. That's also their challenge to go in and perform. It's a positive challenge. It's a positive difficulty, but it is. They don't get to take 6 months to go train and then go step in the game. The coach just taps them on the shoulder. They got to be ready to go. And that's what life does. That's what cancer does. That's what other illnesses does. That's what other setbacks do. Life just taps you on the shoulder and you got to be ready to be your best when your best is needed. So I'll ask folks to consider now if they're staying upstream from some difficulties that are in future life chapters, what might you do now that gets you a little bit more ready, that gets you a little bit more healthy, a little bit more fit? Athletes in star performances in championship games never actually rise to the occasion. They sink to the level of their training. They sink under fatigue and duress and stress to the level of their training. So please listen to this podcast and consider maybe you have a difficulty now. You can apply some of these things to these strategies, techniques, mindset, and beliefs, but what can you adopt now to get more ready for future challenges so you can get through them with more grace as well as grit, smoother, successfully, and set yourself up for success, if that's fair. And so here we go. Your question was how did I hear about that I had cancer? How was it discovered? Is that correct, Lucy?
Yes, but first, I want to reply to what you just said.
Okay, let's go.
That was big. That was a lot. And it was so good because you're right. It's applicable to everywhere in
Yeah,
life. The more we train for whatever we want to be, wherever we want to be, even if it's not there yet, when it comes and taps us on the shoulder, we're ready. And even for the bad stuff, we can just bounce back so much easier and faster.
absolutely.
So I really appreciate you bringing that up. Thanks so much.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. You're welcome. And so as one example of all our collective difficulties, my stage 4 cancer, and I've been fortunate to find a way to move some mountains and scale to the top of some mountains with NHL and Olympics and global business and so on. But I think life balances out. So I've had some valleys, I've had brain damage and PTSD. I've had a stroke and some different COVID, all my businesses shut down. Just sharing that I've had a lot of successes. I've had kind of a concomitant parallel difficulties and setbacks. And it's really, as we teach our athletes, moving through both of them, I don't get overly excited about the successes, and I try and stay calm and clear-headed and graceful and gracious and with still a grateful spirit for other things, when things really fall apart. And so how can we have grit? How can we have grace? And those two dichotomies help us through successfully. I had trouble at first with cancer because I was at that chapter in my life, I can say, and I did say, I was with a buddy and we were snowshoeing up a mountain and deep snow. And we all of a sudden looked at each other and started laughing with belly laughing because we were tired. We were huffing and puffing, but we were going straight up through the snow up the mountain and we weren't stopping. Like we just had so much energy and so much strength. So at that moment in time, we stopped and we looked out from our view in the mountain. I said, it's just a moment in time. I want to recognize because it's not always like this. It's not always going to be like this. Everything in my life feels like a 10 out of 10. My fitness, my strength, and so on. My business, my career, being passionate and successful, my relationship, my children, where I live, etc. And it was 2 weeks later that I was diagnosed with stage 4 head and neck cancer. But I spent 5 years answering your question directly. I spent 5 years feeling like I'm my most fit, healthy, strong, and I was, but I just felt intuitively like I had cancer. It
Huh.
would come up 3 or 4 times a year, this nagging inner self-talk, your gut instinct, your gut brain, what be it? I think I have cancer.
Hmm.
Hang on, hang on, come here.
Oh,
This is Ragnar, the
no.
white wolf, Siberian husky, who's waiting for his pack to go out for a run. If you hear him start to chat, right,
Oh,
Ragsy?
wow. Hello. Oh my gosh, he's so big.
He's a great wolf spirit to have around.
You guys are
Um,
kindred, no doubt.
but I felt in that intuitively 3 to 4 times a year. I really felt like I had cancer. It was a nagging concern. But I would go in, so I went into doctors 2 or 3 times a year, and I would say, they'd be like, "Hi, how are you?" "Oh, I feel great. Yeah, I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?" I'd just be I would be bursting with positive energy, and I didn't look sick. I didn't sound sick, but I did seriously have concern that I had cancer. And no doctor took that seriously for 5 years. I did 2 or 3 times get blood tests, nothing showed up. Every doctor said, look, you're fit, you're strong, you're healthy. Don't worry about it. So, based on the way I showed up, not looking sick, not sounding sick, it was difficult to have doctors take me seriously. And I ended up being misdiagnosed and overlooked for 5 years, despite my continually knocking on doctors' doors and asking them to take a closer look. Now, I hold accountability because I could have gone down to Seattle, down from Canada to Seattle, and paid for a private scan right on the spot. But I like what the doctor said. They said, don't worry about it. You're healthy, you're fit. You're as healthy as a 25-year-old pro athlete. Go have fun.
Can I ask you what, besides something inside your head saying that you had it, was there any other sign that you needed to ask the doctor about?
In the 5th year, there were signs, a little bit of loss of hearing, lump on my neck, which a doctor tried to prescribe antibiotics for, of course.
Huh.
But for the first 4 years, it was just intuition. It was me sensing that. And I think if we become in tune to our body,
Mm-hmm.
especially with health, or we're eating well, or we're focused on how we feel, or we're doing movement training, you become more in tune with how you think, you feel, you move, your body, and so on. And there was nothing for me to feel as far as a symptom or pain. But my body was speaking. It was telling me, and I would urge people not to overlook that. And if I had to repeat this, and I say this with all, it sounds funny, but I say it with sincerity. I would encourage you to do this. If I went back in that situation again,
Mm-hmm.
then I would Google some symptoms of cancer. And then I would say I have these symptoms, because if you don't, you're not going to get taken seriously. And I don't want to deceive anyone. I want to compel doctors to take it seriously and give me a good look. Let's do some scans. Let's take a look. And that's part of the realization. We need to quarterback our health. We need to own the process. We need to make sure it gets done. We need to advocate for ourselves and so on. But that left me behind the eight ball when it was at 5 years. I was finally diagnosed. Then I was told it was too late.
Whoa.
And
Holy cow.
my first meeting with my first oncologist, and if people don't know what palliative care is, that's helping someone die more comfortably. My first meeting, in the first 10 minutes, they recommended palliative care,
Oh my
and the
gosh.
first oncologist refused to do chemo and radiation because there was no chance, so it would just be a waste.
Holy cow.
And then so I immediately cut my doctors from my health team, and went and found some other oncologists that believed in me a little bit more, that were a little bit more clever, that would push the limits of what they were permitted to do a little bit more, and thought that there was a small chance. And
So important to have people that believe
oh,
you're going to
100%.
survive in
Belief
order
is
for you to
so,
survive, right?
yeah, it's like your coach has to believe in you
Right.
more than you do yourself. Your doctor
Yes.
has to believe it's possible. They need to believe in you, and I need to believe in the doctor. I need to believe in the program. And I never thought I would do chemo radiation. I would try a holistic approach first, but stage 4, too late. Let's throw the bombs in there.
Okay.
And it's just really, I'm going to get destroyed too by throwing the bombs in there, but I got to outlast the tumors,
Yep.
right? As we're both being killed essentially. And I had oncologists that recognized the strength that I had of resiliency and mindset, as well as physicality, that were willing to throw bigger bombs in there.
Can I pause you for a sec there?
You sure can.
So you're in the bigger bomb stage. Thought processes while you're going through this. I mean, obviously, in the beginning, when you heard about it, you had one certain thought process. And then as you were going through this chemo, what were you doing mentally for yourself to keep yourself there, to keep yourself stable?
Yeah. I think three key points for that. And keep in mind, when I say three, that could be two, three, or four, but
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm pretty renowned for that. So I'll try and not make it three, just so I can, keep that
Make it.
reputation alive. And but not number one, I realized time is of the essence. And so back when I was diagnosed, and they take a tissue sample to assess and to see what type of cancer it is before you're going to have treatments. When I was at the doctor for that, and he took the tissue sample, I asked him, Luci, could you please tell me who owns that tissue sample? Is that you? Do you own it? Do I own it? Does the government own it? Does the cancer hospital own it? And he looked at me and he said, no, you would own that. And I just stuck out my hand and I said, could I have that, please?
Okay.
because they had already informed me that once they take that sample, it's a couple weeks for it to get assessed. And then once it's assessed, then is there some time for them to get that information into the doctor's hands at the cancer hospital? Then I would get booked in, and I know now every day counts. I'm late stage 4. Every day counts. So I took it I asked the receptionist on the way out to text me the number of the closest private lab to the cancer hospital. I couriered my own tissue sample over to a private lab,
Hmm.
and then I knocked on the staff entrance door and
Wow.
asked them I don't want to step on anyone's toes and make anyone else, miss having something assessed there, but if they have a few minutes that day, could I compel them to take a look today?
Really taking charge of your own destiny here.
100%.
Uh-huh.
I took my tissue, that biopsy, I took it, I drove it over to the lab, got a private lab, and that shaved a few weeks off. That might have been the difference right there.
Wow.
Um, Number one, mindset. The next step, I'm in an MRI machine, the old-fashioned kind that are small. You go in, people haven't been in there. It's kind of like you're in a tunnel, super loud, claustrophobic, uncomfortable.
Yes.
And it was a great symbol and experience because it in and of itself was uncomfortable, besides me being stressed out about, everyone telling me I'm dying. Um, the MRI experience is uncomfortable and claustrophobic. And so what did I do is I surrendered. I didn't give up. I was gonna like push through harder than anyone if I can, but I surrendered to my difficulty, and that this is the difficulty I'm in. My back's against the wall. I'm against the ropes. Uh, um, I surrendered to the reality of that and acknowledged, kind of like it was in the MRI machine, my world uh, is going to be dark. And I'm gonna feel like psychologically and physically like I'm stuck in the mud right up to my mouth,
Mm.
barely able to breathe. And I
Mhm.
need to push through this thick mud with my whole body, barely being able to move ahead for as long as it takes. And be patient, surrendering into that, and trust that somewhere in the distance, I can't even see a glimmer of it now, but I will see light. And there is light ahead, even though all I see is a wall of darkness. So I'm not accepting things relenting and this is my fate, but I'm surrendering to the reality of the moment, and I'm going to immerse in it and be willing to. Um, and then the third thing, look, we're on three. I'm gonna
Woohoo!
stop at three so we nail it. And you asked me kind of how I handled that, and there's a lot that goes into that. But I got into nature every day, and I was hugging trees. I was standing in front of waterfalls, feeling the energy of the strong wind come off into my body, um, and I tried. It got harder and harder, but I tried to move. I tried to do any exercise at first I could, really hard. In the late stages, I could do 1 or 2 reps, but nature and movement. And when I had movement to me is life. When I have movement, I have life and hope.
Yeah.
And nature, I was just really willing to accept all healthy inputs into my body. And of course, nature is scientifically validated to be good for our mental well-being, and certainly didn't make me joyful and happy, but it did help me stay in the game.
Hmm.
Right.
Wow. These are extremely important points. These 3 points. You took charge of your destiny, and you surrendered to reality.
Yes,
And
yes,
those are so important
yes.
in terms of having power in your own life. And then you also said trust when you went out into nature and you moved and you did what you knew was best, trusting that that was going to help you to get through it. So thank you. Those are huge for everybody, I think.
Yeah, great, great. And I'll add, the trust was also like trust in my program, trust in the doctor's belief in that. And because it's very stressful, amazingly, with the gazillions of people that have had cancer, there's no one protocol that you can go to that there's consensus that this is what to do as far as treatments, and this is all the ancillary things that you can do in your own life, the type of food to eat, type of music or meditation to do, like what you could list off dozens of things.
Mhm.
And everyone has differing views, and there's no consensus. There's lots of disagreement. Um,
Yeah.
so to settle on something that you're going to do with the doctors and oncologists and on your own the rest of the day and night, what are you doing every minute of every day that's advantageous to you, and staying away from things that are disadvantage. Um,
Yeah.
to settle into that, eventually you just got to go, this is my program. Like a football team has a playbook, they have a game plan. They need to trust and believe that that's a strategy that's going to help them win. Got to have full belief in it. And you just turn that page and you flip the switch, kind of like, I believe in this, I'm sticking to it. I'm going to do this 24/7 meticulously, and do it well and do it thoroughly, and have the mindset that this is all helping me win.
Okay, now I'm going to go a little deeper with you on this because I know you can handle this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Um, so what did you do with the little piece of you that, so you had this trust? I'm sure it was very much in the forefront of your brain, the executive functioning part of your brain, the part that makes decisions. I'm going to trust, you know. What about the part that may have been like, but really? But is this actually really going to work? Like that doubtful part. What did you do with that?
Listen, you put your whole spirit into this, but two things. Number one, my spirit, although I put my whole spirit into it, also my that doubt part and the belief and what you're enduring, my spirit ended up about the size. If it had a physical size, maybe it's your whole body. Maybe when we're at our best and we're lit up, our spirit exists outside our body, beyond us. Our energy exists beyond us. How someone's energy introduces them before they even speak,
Yes.
right? And so that state is beyond us. My energy and my spirit dwindled to about, the size of a dime deep
Mm,
inside me, protected, and I became more robotic. You're kind of dissociated from your body, and
mm,
your body's in there like it's doing the work. So that kind of is how you keep going. And then in the other case, you have to keep getting back on board to believe, because you do lose that. You get scared.
mhm,
You might be super scared and laying there crying and or fearful or anxious and despair and worried what's going to happen with your children and so on. And you need to keep, it's a process of keep pulling back on board. And um, a lot of that is doing the right things that are within your control. Um, but it's not a linear journey,
I
right?
see. That's
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
We fall off that front. We fall away from that belief a little bit with too much worry and losing hope, and then you get back to it.
You just you continue to bring yourself back. It's a process. You'll lose it,
Yeah,
you bring it back. You lose it, you bring it back, and then I would say the more you keep bringing it back, the easier it is to keep it longer, right?
for sure, for sure. Um, I guess one answer to that is, yeah, you do what you need to do, and when you're in it, these are things you have to do. Afterwards, I look at, these are things I got to do because I got to dig down a million miles deeper than I thought even I could. And now I have that. It's a gift of strength. I know it's there. I know I can go to it. Um, but that's from today's perspective. But as far as I believe in tools and symbolism to get back to it. I would go into the forest because there's giant towering trees.
Hmm.
And when I see Symbolism means you can bestow upon any object meaning that you define. So when you see or touch that object, that meaning comes to you. It's a way to flip the switch into your A plus game immediately, by what you associate. And so, by example, a, a tall, towering tree that's deeply rooted, I see that as very grounded. And it's been there hundreds of years and weathers the storm and it's still standing tall. It's grounded and it stands tall and strong. So I happen to decide to bestow that meaning upon the forest and trees. So when I step in there, I feel those things more readily. Those words of self-coaching, I don't need to say them, they come to me. Um, Another symbol that I used in the most difficult time that you were talking about was a stopwatch. And a stopwatch is something I can touch and feel. I'm one of my roles as a coach, and I coach in sport and in the training side. So I have a stopwatch, and there was a time where I was having difficult not relenting, and it was just nonstop. It was such an intense level of torture with what was happening inside and outside my body. And inside from the radiation, just feeling like in your mucous membranes, your face, your brain, your throat, your chest, like you're just burnt up from the inside out, and a whole bunch of other unpleasant symptoms. But I was finding it difficult to stay at it. And of course, we know that's possible. Gosh, people just say they're going to lose 10 pounds and they relent before they even get there. People relent all the time. They take an easier way out all the time.
Mhm.
So this is actually an intense challenge.
Mhm.
And so I pulled out a stopwatch as my symbol for like reaching the finish line. And I set it for 1 minute. And so I committed to 1 minute. And and then of course the timer went off and I just clicked it and reset it for a minute, set it for a minute. And that's how I got through that day. And soon it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, and then I didn't need the stopwatch except to pick it up and remind me of that resiliency and seeing it through, and going to the end of your time and race and so on. So those are sort of tools, strategies, symbolism that were very important to me seeing it through.
They're so, the whole thing is so meaningful in so many ways. And like you said in the beginning, this is applicable to people in all kinds of challenges.
Hmm.
I love that you talked about symbolism and that we can make anything mean anything. And you went and touched those trees that were grounded. And that stopwatch, right, it's you as a coach, it's the strongest
Yeah.
time of your life. And when you set it for 1 minute, was it, I'm just going to live this minute now? Or was it like, I'm allowing myself to feel this for 1 minute? What was the minute?
No, it was like I have enough resiliency to I'll stick to it for 1 minute. Like I'm gonna put everything I have. Can I endure for 1 minute?
Okay, just that, at
It
least
was
just
at
this
it was
one.
at that level, and I was at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to see 60 seconds through was
Mm.
not easy. But it brought it down, it brought months down into the shortest bite of time I could. So that I stayed in there.
Coaching yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And we know, I'll touch on a very intense subject, but also suicide.
Mm.
And I could relent by killing myself, or I could relent by just not trying so hard against the cancer and against the treatments and healing, and not do many things for myself, become a passenger to the process. so I could kind of dwindle out a little more slowly. But I would be choosing to relent and wind down still. Um, I always say I reference suicide as, if it's fair for me to say that's a mistake, it's the only mistake we can't come back from.
Mm.
I can screw up in so many ways. I can lose my home, lose my finance, lose my relationship, lose my health, and I can screw up in smaller ways. Um, I've got a buddy that made some bad decisions and spent quite a number of years in jail. Now he owns 6 training centers and is a motivation speaker and a loving family and doing really, really well. Uh,
Nice.
we can come back from any mistake except for suicide. And it's just in that second, like if it was 2 minutes before, 5 minutes later, that probably wouldn't be the decision. It's just like right then, right? And so
Mm.
that's when I was on the cusp of relenting. It was right then. That's why I set the stopwatch also for a minute. I need to pass through this where I'm thinking on giving up. I need to pass through that. I don't need to pass through it very far, but I need to. So one was the volume of time I thought I could commit to tolerating and endure at that time. But it was also a small moment in time to try and transition. My emotions and mindset are going to shift as time goes on. I need to get to a stage where I'm my mind and my emotions are more willing to dig in longer, and it was to graduate me through to that.
Wow, that's brilliant to think of that, and the point that you are making here about that our emotions shift and change all the time. I think that's what I want to bring out of that for the audience too. You might be feeling one way, but take a minute.
Yeah.
Take 2 minutes, three, see how you feel after that. And we change that fast, or they just need to pass through if we let them.
Yeah, we can ignore all of our emotions on all normal times. Yeah, I agree 100%. We can acknowledge this is how I feel. What does that mean? These are valid, but they don't define me. They're not me. I picture myself, I just continue walking forward and my emotions drift past.
Mhm.
And I think we get different mindset and coping skills where something happens in my life and I feel all these emotions. Well, gosh, I might feel them for 6 months. Might be 6 months later, I might invite you to coffee so I can still talk about them. Right. But then later on in my life with different, better mindset skills, better coping skills, in the process of always becoming our higher level self, the same type of thing happens. And maybe it's only for an hour. And
Mm.
I've already moved past the intensity of those type of emotions. And now I'm thinking and seeing and perceiving and feeling in a better state on there. So that's so powerful for us to improve those type of things. And they also serve like how great can we show up for our most important relationship? What kind of love can we produce with someone? What great experiences can we co-create? So we're in the process of becoming, whether it's through difficulties or our own study and we up level, one, we create and attract more opportunities, but we can also just create more exceptional moments and experiences. And, that's the type of person we are through each day. So there's so much fun and joy and learning and growth and positive experience that comes from this as well.
This is great that you were sharing about being purposeful, and you always talk about that in your Instagram posts and social media. And when you're working with people on stage, even you talk about how you want to think about who you want to be, because we can always become someone else, the person that we ideally want to be. Am I paraphrasing that right? Is that
Oh no, I think that's fair. So many people, including myself at one point, resist change. You can imagine like showing up in the world when you're 40, for example, and you're still like how you were in grade 9 in high school, and a lot of people are pretty the same all the way through their life, right? And so I like this philosophy I've coined saying always be in the process of becoming. And I like, stay curious on and be active in that process. It's exciting. So absolutely, we can always get like skill acquisition in learning a sport, but what type of person are we? How do we show up? And of course, there's lots to learn and practice and evolve and so on, but there are higher levels of ourself. How we perceive. Do we take things personally or not? Do we have a can-do attitude or defeatist? Are we a thriver or a victim? And kind of our level of EQ. And I don't know why, but emotional intelligence gets a lot of pushback from maybe it's just what attracts the media for a segment of the population, but a lot of parents in the news were like angry that their kids might learn about EQ, emotional intelligence in school, social emotional skills. And it's like, well, do you know the Fortune 500 companies, when they're choosing between person A and person B, they're going to choose the person with the highest EQ. And it's more of a differentiator than IQ, our intellectual cognitive ability. It's so important. And
Mm.
our EQ determines how happy are we? How well do we treat other people? What's the success of our friendships and relationship and collaborations and partnerships and so on. Um, so yes, there's always the opportunity of becoming, and every single day, as you said every single day. Tomorrow morning, today didn't go well for me. Well, tomorrow morning, I get another kick at the can if I'm blessed to wake up. And when I wake up, first thing I say is, thank you for this day.
Yeah.
Thank you for this day. And number two, I can decide to be any person that I want to be. Right. And I think most of us would look out at the world and we wish that the world was a little bit different. There was more peace. There wasn't war. There wasn't racism. There wasn't hatred. There was more love and peace and kindness and so on. And a lot of us have a lot of passion that we hope to change the world. And hopefully there's a ripple effect from our positive impact in ways that help individuals. But what we can do, this is exciting because what each of us can do immediately is change our own world. Like my Peter Twist, very small world, my path I take today. I'm talking to Luci. I was talking to my dog Ragnar. I'm going to go out and grocery shop. I'll pass by strangers. I'll have a meeting and talk to peers. How I show up into those small moments. Am I positive, passionate, present, kind? Or am I short, ill-tempered, grumpy, distracted, anxious? Those things I can choose. Right? I can choose how I show up. And how I show up into my world is how my world reciprocates with me, one person at a time. That becomes my day and my life experience. And naturally, if you're good energy, positive, high vibes, kind, respectful, present, very present, interested, considerate, respectful, treating people with dignity, well, people reciprocate usually kind of around the same way
Mm-hmm.
and they connect. But if I'm the opposite of that, then that's what I get from people. And so we really create our own life. We do have the ability today to redefine ourselves, to decide how we're going to show up and show up, of course, authentic, genuine, but is it the best version of ourselves or the worst version? And with that becomes practice and soon we're always like that. We're
Right.
always like that consistently, right? And so my way to get started on this is I like to, and I encourage the listeners, try this out to predefine your day. You decide how you're going to feel in your day before your day happens. You decide how you're going to show up to it. No matter what happens, good or bad, you're these ways. And it's just three words. And they can change day by day, but my go-tos are positive, present, and passionate.
Mm.
And it might be another day where maybe I need to be patient and loving and giving, or, resilient and adaptable. So I choose three words that can serve my day. And that becomes my mindset. That becomes how I show up, my demeanor, the character qualities and attributes I give, my words, the emotive, my energy behind it. And that's how people then reciprocate to me. That's how I experience my world. We can pivot our own small world right now,
Yeah.
right now.
I
And that's exciting. That's powerful for people. And I know a lot of folks don't like to hear that though. They don't want control. They would rather give accountability. Someone else is pulling the puppet strings. Someone else is deciding what happens to everybody on earth. And that they're able to give up control with that, I think. And ultimately we do have the power and autonomy to decide, how am I going to treat Lucy today? How am I going to treat your listeners today? And I can decide that every step of my day, right? Every step of my day, every person along the way. And then that becomes the world you experience. So it's so at our fingertips for people to fundamentally change their world and how they experience it to right away, because they're the orchestrator of what they conduct and how they navigate their path for what they do experience.
We are. And I want to jump with this because
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love how you said control. And I know I've gone through a lot of change in my life. I know what it's
Yes.
like to not want that control, to be afraid of it. Let somebody else decide how my day's gonna go. I don't want to think about that.
Yeah,
But it is so. I'm watching your face. I'm watching you talk. Your smile. We talked earlier about how far you've been, how much you've done. There's just so much more joy when you take that control, and the fear goes away. It's joy that actually comes out, and where that control really matters is times like the story we've been talking about.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you mentioned you want to train to be that person that so when that controversy hits or when that difficult time hits, you got it. And I think
Right.
that's where I want to swing back around to your story.
Yeah.
So you've been that person in control of how things go. You've practiced that over and over again. We were also talking about the lowest times of your cancer experience.
Yes.
And so now it's your choice. We can jump out of that and start talking about how you started recovering and what that was like. Or if you have anything more to add about the lowest point, we can just add that in. It's up to you.
I'll add one more thing. Let's go right to survive then. Lowest point for anybody who's on this podcast listening, and for myself. Lowest point, and it's a time of survive. People are surviving. They could be working through trauma, other types of loss, other setbacks. Just trying to survive the day, trying to survive this chapter. And and it can be things, not quite as intense, but people's hearts are still devastated. It can be an aspiring athlete who's put 10 years into training and all of a sudden, they have an ACL injury and they're out of their championship or their Olympic qualifier and so on. So let's just say injury, because injury it's a more minor form of the type of overcoming and surviving we're talking about, but it's easy to relate to for everybody. Let's say, okay, we're living and we're sort of healthy, but sort of not, and sometimes exercise, but lots of times don't, and we don't always do what's good for us. And then we get injured. Well, most of us will go to physio or physical therapy and start to do a program to help rehabilitate our injury. And maybe we even decide, oh, I'm going to eat a few of these foods because they give nutrients for healing because I want to get back to where I was. I've been set back. Now I want to get back to where I was. And I try and avoid in life, and I'm really acutely aware of the cost of time when I'm working hard to get back to where I already was. right? I want to be moving forward, but such is life. And so when you're in the survive mode, this is the last takeaway on that lowest point. When we figure out how we can survive and we can figure out how we can heal and start to recover back to where the level we previously were at, just don't stop.
Mm,
All of the good things you're doing to survive and heal and rebuild to get back to the level you used to be at, that's great. If you just keep doing those things, you'll go on to a higher level. Just stay on the path that you're on, that you started when you were surviving and healing, restoring, rebuilding. And if you continue, you will become your best version, the highest level of yourself ever. And that is there. Stay on that, chart it out, stay on that ascending route. And the thrive is out there for you. And I think in some ways, the best opportunity for someone to reach their best self is to be at their worst.
mm.
And all of the things you learn through that, but also the things you adopt to get back to where you're at, those are all things that advantage you, and you keep doing them, you can reach your highest level self ever.
Oh, so needed to hear, but so hard to
Yeah,
hear, right?
yeah,
So hard
yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah.
These
So
bad
I
times.
send that out to your listeners with strong encouragement and conviction in it. And it doesn't have to be a perfect path. It's not a perfect route, but we stay on that orientation and get back on that program, let's call it, when we fall off it. And and know that that's there for you. The no matter what age all of us are at, I'm 61 now, and my body and brain remains wildly adaptable to smart training stimulus if I give that to it. I
Oh
can
yeah.
grow more brain cells. I can rewire how my brain thinks and operates and conducts my body. I can build muscle mass. I can be more mobile. I can move through pain. If I choose that that's important to me and I decide to take on some smart training for that. So the potential is there if that for the people that does interest and excite.
And you
Um,
are still such a master athlete. I mean, watching what you do just through certain, just random things that you post, you are still in the very top level of society in terms of strength and endurance and movement. I mean, that is something for people to live into, to try to reach. Just you are an example of what we can continue to be after so many things have happened.
Well, I'll respond to that with thank you for that, recognizing that, and with twofold. One is in some ways, yeah, I'm thriving and doing well, and especially relative to the challenges that I've had. So thank you for that. I'm learning to accept and receive that kind of comment graciously, but also recognizing there's a lot of rock stars out there, and everyone's got a little bit of rock star in them and some hidden talents and abilities and things that they push through on each day in their own way.
So, yes, I'm so glad you were able to take that compliment. um, you just said, when you're getting back to where you were, keep going, and that takes you to the
Yeah,
next level.
yeah.
And I think that the fact that you said you're now a thriver, you did that. You got back to your next level. And would you be okay to just talk about that for a couple minutes with me here?
Yeah, I was at a stage where, and interestingly, when I went through that cancer battle, Lucy, I didn't put it on social media.
Hmm.
And to my knowledge, there was only about 6 or 8 people in the world that knew I had cancer and was battling. Um, I thought it was such a long way to fall and for me to get hit hard with that. I knew if other people knew, of course they'd be sincere in their hope that I would do well, but they would be mostly scared for themselves.
Mm.
I didn't want to freak people out for being afraid. What's that mean for them? What could they get hit with if I got hit with that? And so I thought one, I'm a very private person. I like to address challenges a little bit lone eagle, or with my most immediate, friend or partner or family, and kind of battle those things privately. But also, I thought I would wait until I would be successful. And people need inspiration. They need a hero. They need those type of things to compel them to go forward in life. And I thought I'd wait to see if I could be that person for what they need, but also to present them like, okay, this happened, but I got through, so that they could be assured that they could too, versus being freaked out. And so when I was going through, really almost nobody knew that I was, which was wild. When I started to see the light, it's not that everything felt good right away. I had so many darn symptoms and side effects. I had so many side effects is the right word. I didn't feel great, but I just had it's like giddy up. I had a determination. Um, and so every day now I got to flip, okay, now I'm going to walk to the gym. And walking to the gym was like running 5 marathons, how it felt for me. Now I'm going to train a bit. I'm training like at 5% of what I used to, but I'm there with my full effort that is possible. Now I'm getting to do more positive things that are helping to rebuild me or helping to me recover from the radiation chemo. You got to survive cancer and then survive chemo radiation and then, heal from all the damage that that does.
Mhm.
And so it made me, how I responded to that light was not really with joy or anything yet at that point. It was just doubling down on my commitment to like, let's take it to the next level. Let's keep going. Let's do all these good things that are good for me, whether I have cancer or whether I'm healthy. You got side effects that just last to this day. Um, so it's not like you're fully clear and you're always reminded of what you've been through because of those. But I'm on the best side of the ground today with you. Grateful for that. And the gifts, you start to take note of the gifts. And gifts, well, I'm so grateful for this day. Number two, like anything happens that's stressful or whatever, it doesn't really affect me that much. I know I need to address it and deal with it, but it's like, doesn't raise my heartbeat, my heart rate one beat.
Mhm.
Um, I have a lot of self-belief can do that. I can get through the storms, but most importantly, I have more empathy for people.
Mm.
I'm able to see that, okay, I'm able to be more empathetic to people in their own difficulties and pain and challenges, and I'm able to be 1,000% more present.
Mm.
This day I see all moments with a type of reverence, that, I'm hanging out having lunch with my daughters. Well, that's a time of reverence. I have reverence for this moment that I'm experiencing. But that could be walking through the forest on a hike with my dog and I meet a stranger. Same thing. I'm 100% present. I didn't have that ability at all before I went through that challenge, right? I had so many things going on. And so I would like fly home and quickly drop into a kid's birthday party. And I'm sincere and I'm genuine. I'm enjoying it, but my mind's also 100 other places and, pulled in a lot of directions where now, even if I had that much going on, I'm 100% there. I'm 100% here with you. I'm 100% on this podcast. This is my whole life right now for this time we're together. And that's a gift. And that really switched on when I started to see the light and started to know that, I have a chance to push through and carry on. And then it becomes important to us. How do I want to do this? How do I want to live? How do I want to show up for people? Um, how do I want to experience the day and the moments and help other people? I can't change the world, but I can help someone have a nice moment when I'm buying a coffee at a coffee shop, I can be present, kind, respectful, thankful, versus rude, complaining, distracted on my phone. So simple ways, right? I don't have the ability or the positioning to affect the whole world, but I can affect that moment. And then we just aggregate those
Aha.
every hour, all day, all week, all month, all year. And then that becomes your life and your path and the type of people you attract, the opportunities that align, and so on. Yeah.
Such a gift that you're now sharing through your experience. Hopefully, many of us will get what you learned without having to go through the experience. And that's a big gift, that another gift that you're offering the world today, Peter. So
I,
thank you
I
so
I
much.
hope people do receive some of that they can consider and orient for themselves. That there's certain things, if things don't resonate at this point, maybe they never do. Maybe next chapter, what I said would resonate. But if they don't right now, just throw them out. But the things that do land well for you, that resonate and that make sense, or that switch on in your brain, or a little bit of an epiphany or anything, grab those ones and focus on those ones and see what that can mean for you. um, and I have as a way to inspire it forward and help people do well without having to go through that type of difficulty. One, of course, I have certification courses. Our most popular right now is functional physique, which is how to train at any age to regain long lines of muscle. So we affect our appearance, but every single rep, set, and exercise and method is to help us have a human vehicle that moves skillfully, pain-free at all ages, so we can go out and move around and enjoy life. So a really unique fusion of functional physique and then, being more active with a body that works, that's pain-free, helps us be more healthy. And when we live a healthy life physically, it helps us adopt other healthy habits as well. This is also part of the bigger picture, preventing people from that illness difficulty. But on the parallel side of the fence, which is so important because mindset affects everything and everyone, and
Yeah.
especially ourselves, and our level of happiness and peace. And I call it emotional sovereignty. I want to hold power over my emotions, and I believe we can, and my self-talk and so on. But I have a course that's more of a program. Like if someone goes to the gym or they have a trainer and they do a fitness program or a physical oriented workout program, I have a mindset program.
Yeah.
It is like a 12-week program, and it's like it has a learn by doing practice. So essentially on one day a week, students take a couple hours and they watch video lectures, they read through some module chapter, and then there's learn by doing. It's exercises for your mindset, how you see, think, and show up in the world,
Mm.
your courage, your confidence, your coping skills, your positive leadership, all kinds of things to keep shifting and growing your mindset and attitude and perceptions and abilities. It's a 12-week learn by doing practical program. This is all digital that people can consume on their own time in their own home. But I've taken that from our work with the 2000 pro and Olympic athletes, and I've taken that with my work with cancer patients. I've taken it from my mentorships with CEOs and entrepreneurs who are trying to blast through to a higher level. People at
Nice.
the worst, people going for their podium level gold medal. And what are the mindset strategies that are simple to learn and simple to do, but they just have a game-changing, life-changing, powerful effect on people in all those different situations. So it's like an all-star team of what is shown over time to be my most effective mindset methods and strategies.
How exciting and how
Oh,
valuable. Wow.
it's and I like that it's simple works for folks. So it's a 12-week program. The most common feedback I'm getting, feeling it with my heart, about week four, people message me and they say, I've learned and grown in mindset more in 4 weeks than I thought I would in the whole
Oh,
12 program. So people are getting the
excellent.
value as they need it in there.
Excellent.
And that's something I really encourage for folks. And that was a way for me to go, okay, from these experiences, the being at the worst cancer wise, but also I'm helping some athletes chipping in with them making the podium and world championships and helping this adult parent shift from a career they're not passionate about into being an entrepreneur, pursuing their own something they believe in and find meaningful. All of those situations. Here's what helped them do well and
Yeah.
help them succeed. And then now here it is. And yeah, that's a current way to scale some positive impact and that ties into my empathy coming out of the cancer battle. I understand people have difficulties, even if it's a positive aspirational challenge for something that they want and are going after, it's still difficult. And
Yeah,
it's not going to be a linear journey
that's
to their level of success that they want. So this is equally valid for that path as well.
That's lovely, and I'm so glad you mentioned those. I'm gonna put the links to your two courses down in the description so that people
Oh,
can
great,
take a
great.
look at this valuable learning that you are offering to the world from all the experiences you've gotten. So grateful to have you on the show today, Peter. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much for doing what you do in your world with all the positive ways you affect people and for hosting this, inviting me on and guiding the conversation through. Been enjoyable for me and I think very highly of what you do. I read your posts on Instagram because they're smart, articulate, and science-based and practical. And you're a very good writer, very good speaker. So I really enjoy your work myself.
Wow,
And
woo!
yeah. Anyone who's listening to your podcast has probably already tapped into those, but if they're not, I encourage you to be.
Thank you.
So as I say, and it's a equal opportunity for me to learn from you and to enjoy engaging with you. So thank you so much.
Great. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Have the best day. Create the best day. And cheers.